So what this technology allows you to do is it allows you to type what you want, but it also allows you to save whatever you want, whether it's a single word or a sentence like I've done here, or an entire note template, for instance. You can save that into this list of what we call macros. Okay, so as an example here, I'm going to select this text. I'm going to click add macro, and you can see that it shows up at the end of my list here. Okay, and so rather than typing that, I can really just click that little bit of saved text here. And this is always going to appear in my list now. It's saved permanently. I can click it here, and whatever I just saved into that macro now appears.
Welcome to another episode of Genesis Nation. And for those of you who have been around Genesis for a long time, you've probably met Erez Lirov, one of our partners. And I'm honored. You might think this is Erez, the younger version, but it actually is not. This is Erez's brother, Roy Lirov. And Roy is a board-certified surgeon who has left the medical field and is now in, well, technically you're in the medical field a little bit still, but his roots are in coding. And something happened in your family that was pretty ingenious that I'm sure your dad imparted in all of you, but coding is something cool. So the beauty of having Roy on our team is that he brings a piece from the allopathic fields, nurse practitioners, medical doctors, PAs, into the technology that has been so successful in the chiropractic field. So Genesis, from a historical perspective, yeah, we've been in the cloud. We've got the technology. The cloud architecture is incredible. It's kept us, just moving data back and forth so that you have efficient use of your office software. And we started as like a chiropractic, high volume chiropractic, and then expanded to all different types of chiropractic. But it wasn't until recently, until the marketplace has changed. A lot of chiropractors are integrating, adding physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, medical doctors. When I was in practice, I had all three of those, not at once, but all three of those types of practitioners practicing with me. And there was always complaints about the notes or having to go outside of the system for the notes. And my office was operating, I think, before this all came to fruition. And now, without further ado, I'm going to have Dr. Roy Lirov show us what is available now for these allopathic practitioners to flow more within their algorithms and the way they take notes.
Yeah, thanks very much, Brian. So I think it's part of the struggle when you have an integrated clinic and maybe you have an EHR that supports your workflow as a chiropractor, and then you might discover and be surprised to discover that the allopathic workflow, whether it's NPs, PAs, MDs, whatever, who are working in your clinic, struggle to accomplish their workflow using the EHR that you like and using the workflow that you like. And so what we've built is really from the ground up, based on over a decade of my own clinical experience, as well as some of our collaborators, an integrated documentation platform within the same system that allows folks from that different medical background to accomplish their workflow super efficiently. I'm going to take you through that. I've shared my screen here, and hopefully you can see sort of a landing page for this demo doctor, Dr. Joseph Hayden here. And we're going to start our workflow seeing patients today. And the way we do that is just clicking the Document and Build button, which opens up a familiar screen, maybe for many of you. Our patient roster. We've got 2 appointments today. We're seeing Alex Kamal and we're seeing Naomi Nagata. Now, the very first difference in this workflow is some of you may have quick note mode enabled. And what that means is when you click on a patient, you immediately start documenting. Typically, many of our chiropractors will document using what's called the SuperNote documentation template, the comprehensive chiropractic and physical medicine focused documentation template. Now, when you turn quick note mode off, the kind of workflow that you're going to engage in is a little bit more familiar to the allopathic medical. And that really is, rather than diving right into documenting what you're doing, you're really going to start with a little bit of chart review. So now when you click on a patient with quick note mode off, you're going to get the patient's chart. And that really begins with the chart summary. So this is key high-level clinical information that might come from the notes or might come from elsewhere in the medical record, maybe stuff that's been faxed in, stuff that you've collaborated within and outside your own department on the patient's care for, what have you. All of it is centralized in this chart summary. This chart summary has a bunch of widgets. You've got a demographics banner on top with a patient avatar, an indicating icon, whether they're using our integrated patient portal, and some other familiar sort of demos information. You've got these little widgets that we call chart components that live in here in these little boxes. This is a widget that shows you all of the encounters for this patient with associated notes that are here as these little tiles and allow you to begin documentation by clicking the Add Note button for any of these encounters. Here are tasks that are specific to this patient. These are sort of rigorous follow-up tools that get a number and get completely tracked and live in your workbench in a timely manner, so you can make sure that you take care of all the administrative or financial or even clinical matters that you might otherwise have to memory manage or have somewhere on a spreadsheet that you're trying to follow up on.
And Roy, these are the same tasks that we're used to seeing on the Task Manager console and Workbench.
Exactly right. And you'll see that the entry point for these tasks can be either the chart summary itself or within the actual clinical documentation itself. And our goal always is to do things as concurrently as possible so that we don't have duplication and we don't have omission as a result of having multiple things in multiple places. So absolutely. You've got a patient documents organizer. This is where all of the clinical documentation goes and anything that might have been faxed in, an ICD-10 based problem list that you can collaborate on, medications with integrated prescribing. So your prescribers can go right here or even from their note, send off medications, and then you get an updated medication list as a byproduct of just doing that workflow. Awesome. You've got sticky notes, a place where you can collaborate on messages with your office, with the patient, and some high-level clinical information like family history and social history, which you can use to populate into your notes. This is all totally customizable, by the way. So if you want to rearrange this so that you see some of these widgets in different places or whatever, every provider, every user can have their own sort of customized version of this chart summary.
Right.
So I'm going to dive into documentation using our FlexNote technology, which it's not geared toward chiropractors necessarily, although it can be used by really any medical practitioner. It's really geared toward that allopathic medical workflow. And it's inspired really by a very simple word processor. And at its sort of core, this technology allows you to really type up whatever customized note you want. But of course, it's super inefficient to type your note every single time. And so this technology is powered by the ability to create templates that we call macros that are also completely customizable, and the ability to create placeholders throughout any of your note templates that we call fields. Those placeholders are these really smart sort of locations that either automatically pull in information for you already, either from other notes, or from patient intake form, or from elsewhere in the charts, such as these widgets that you collaborate on, or places where you can optimize your input. So instead of typing something in, you can choose from a list of options. And there are all sorts of fancy things that we can do with all these fields, some of which we'll scratch the surface on and show you in today's demo. So it looks like this fella here, Alex Kamal, already has a note that someone has started here. Let's go to Naomi Nagata's chart here. Looks like we've got a couple encounters that are missing notes. So let's go ahead and add a note for this encounter today, July 28th. We're going to click the Add Note button. And when we do that, the FlexNote note editing environment opens up. Okay, and just to kind of orient you to what we're looking at here, this is kind of a word processor style layout. You've got a note title up top that you can type here. So let's say this is a progress note. You can type that if you want. Choose a particular note type, like a history and physical, a procedure note, or whatever you want. And then when you get into the body of the note, you can type directly in here at any time. And what that means is whatever goes in this note, if it's from one of these templates or whatever, you can always customize, you can always override, you can always put in exactly what you want in the body of the note. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, would be super inefficient if we were typing out our notes every time. So what this technology allows you to do is it allows you to type what you want, but it also allows you to save whatever you want, whether it's a single word or a sentence, like I've done here, or an entire note template, for instance. You can save that into this list of what we call macros. Okay, so as an example here, I'm going to select this text. I'm going to click Add Macro, and you can see that it shows up at the end of my list here. Okay, and so rather than typing that, I can really just click that little bit of saved text here. And this is always going to appear in my list now. It's saved permanently. I can click it here, and whatever I just saved into that macro now appears. Okay. Now, snippets of text can be useful. If there are phrases that you find yourself using over and over again that you want to pepper in, one of your notes or whatever, sure, nice, handy little feature. But what's really powerful about this is when you use it to put in an entire note. So, for instance, I've got some mental health documentation loaded up in this macro set, which I'll show you in a second. But here's a macro that works just like this one that we added together, except one layer of complexity higher. It's a whole progress note saved as a macro. So when I click on it, you see it load into the rich text editor. Awesome. There's a bunch of plain text, same way as we saved this macro. But then there are all these areas that look yellow, which are those placeholders that we call fields. Okay. Now, some of these yellow areas will automatically pull in information. So this field right here in gray knows the patient's name. This field right there knows the patient's age. So it's automatically pulling these things for you. That's saved in the macro that we created together. Some of these have some default values. So we saved this macro when we created it to say that this field will start with no psychiatric history. But maybe for this particular.
So Roy, when you created this document, you inputted like a bracket that said patient name, patient age, patient race, patient gender. So now every time the macro pops up, whatever patient it is, it fills that data out immediately.
Exactly right. Awesome. Yeah. And this is all completely user defined. So there's no reason to ever, need to call our help desk or work with some developers to design these templates or whatever. All of this stuff, it's a little bit under the hood, but it's available for use with a little bit of training for any of our users. Okay. There's stuff that's a little bit more simplistic. The simplest kind of field is a text field, which is basically just a plain area. I believe like this one. This is, for example, a text field where we're putting our session start and end time just as examples here. And you can really, again, type whatever you want. Or rather than typing it, you can select it from these predefined macros that are specific to this field. Okay, and I'll show you some more useful examples of that. The neat consequence of putting the areas that have specific clinical information that might vary from patient to patient within these placeholders, first of all, is that navigating your notes and getting to the parts that need to be changed from patient to patient is super convenient. Yeah. So rather than trying to dive through the note and figure out where to put your cursor and which sentences need to be changed and whatever it is to go from your template to a note for that patient, you can use the field navigator and immediately get to the spot where you're going. You can also hit the cat.
Yeah. That's cool.
You can also shortcut with the tab key. So if I filled something out here, hit the tab button, I get to the next field and I get to the next field. So you can see very quickly, you can go through your note, fill out the information that's specific to this patient. And as I go, sometimes we can choose things that pop up.
I mean, if you're watching this, you can see how fast Dr. Lirov is working through this, and he's a doctor doing notes. So, and I was notorious for not doing notes and having other people do them, but this looks a lot easier than even. And I know most chiros are not using this because we have templates that are completely built on our Supernote. But I know you and I have sat together with physical therapists and physician assistants, and they were ecstatic about this. So you've obviously paid attention.
The idea is you want to get to the point where you've set up these macros so that you can fill this information out while you're seeing the patient in front of you.
Yeah.
so that you can have that dialogue, you can have the clinical encounter, you can verify some of these things that might have come in automatically from the patient intake form, make sure you're on the same page. And as that's happening, you don't have to memory manage what the encounter was and later go back and document. You can have this all set up while you're seeing the patient, kind of cook through everything, and then you're done. You click the big check mark and you've completed your note.
Phenomenal.
Now,
and with that check mark, you're also sending out the bills too, whatever CPT you've used.
Exactly right. And you may have noticed here, as I was filling this out, I got to the diagnosis section.
Yeah.
And the diagnosis section is informed by that problem list that we saw in the chart summary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But one of the situations that are commonly encountered, especially in integrated practices, are you've got multiple practitioners who are caring for different aspects of what's going on with the patient.
Yeah.
So, you might have an internist who's dealing with metabolic syndrome, and you might have a chiropractor who's dealing with degenerative disc disease. Okay. So if you've got a shared problem list and you're all kind of updating the same list, it's very easy to collide and get in each other's way, and have to sort of manually manage with every visit which of the conditions you're seeing. So with this technology, what we've created is the ability for folks to have their own view on the problem list.
So
for instance,
per practitioner has their own view.
Yeah, exactly right. So you can collaborate. So your starting point is the shared problem list. And if, for instance, you're seeing a medical practitioner as part of the clinic who diagnoses the patient with hyperlipidemia, you don't have to worry about staying in sync. Chiropractor, as part of that clinic, will know that hyperlipidemia has been diagnosed because the problem list will be updated. But they won't struggle with suddenly the hyperlipidemia is the thing that they're accidentally billing for because they're not paying attention, because their notes automatically bringing in all diagnoses. Absolutely not. They've got their own view of things. So even though it appears on the list, they can select, well, hey, we're treating this, we're going to bill for it. And we're treating that, and we're going to bill for it. And if you saw, not only did, when I selected these guys, not only did they appear in the documentation like this, but when I click the actual bill button, they appeared here in the preview of the claim itself. Awesome. So if we're in the physical medicine space, and let's say we worked on the spinal endostopathy, and we worked on the myalgias, and we want to document and bill for them. And let's say, the osteoporosis kind of had something to do with it, so we want to document it, but it wasn't directly relevant to the care that we provided today in such a way that we want it to appear on the claim. Well, this problem list type field is flexible enough where you can pick and choose what you want to appear in the documentation or on the claim itself. And you can even change the order. And again, the key thing is to avoid collisions. So when your medical practitioner on the allopathic side comes in there and wants to see the metabolic syndrome and the hyperlipidemia, they don't have to do this reorganizing. This list will remember how it's supposed to sit for that specific practitioner.
Wonderful. So
from that, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say from a high level, I just want to pay mind to attention span online and make sure that because I'm a chiropractor and I want to make sure that we hit high level. Like, what else can I'm alluding to my own attention deficit, maybe, and I don't want to say that that's every chiropractor. That's just me, so I'll admit that. But like from a high level, Roy, what else can we see and can doctors expect, especially med doctors, PAs, NPs, because they've shared their frustrations that I don't like this built-in template that you provide with chiropractic, so I don't want to use your software. However, this the need dictated the creation, the innovation. What other kind of high level things can we expect from this aspect, this technology?
Yeah, we got into the weeds with that one, and we can get into the weeds with every little part of this. So I apologize for that. But the key takeaway from this is it's completely flexible. Awesome. In the sense that you have a starting point with some of these notes that we've created. But if you want to change this to accommodate a different kind of specialty practice, You can update this in whatever way you want. And just like we made that initial macro, you can create a new macro here. Add macro, just like that.
So
And you can,
for example, I do, we're doing visco supplementation injections. There's a lot of knee injections. So I can create a template that is for knee injections only.
100%.
And
you
then
can create
every template that I'm doing a knee injection, boom. Let's say I do laser. Even though laser's cash, we've talked about this time and time again, there really is no true cash practice. Like, we have to take notes. We're licensed physicians, no matter what state you practice in, right? So we got to have those notes. So you could make a laser template, which would say, I'm using this many diodes in this area and all that. You could do laser knee, laser shoulder. Awesome. So cool. I love the flexibility. I see right there, JTech exam. That was something that was engendered out of our previous meeting that we had. So for those of you chiros out there using, and PTs out there using JTech, we've got a complete template that's already baked in here. I see radiology report. Awesome. Because that's critical. If someone's doing visco supplementation injections, we have to have proof, radiological proof of osteoarthritis. And I see it right there. Sorry, I got excited. That was my soapbox. It's
no,
not
no
often.
worries.
If you're getting me excited about notes, you know why we're on camera here, Roy. So this is that you've done your job, my friend.
No one should get this excited about documentation, but I will say that this is the platform that I kind of dreamed of when I was in practice, and I've used a bunch of different EHRs. The key thing here is you want to be able to conveniently create note templates that you can use for all different aspects of your clinical care. Whether you're seeing patients for GI complaints or derm complaints, or if for some reason you're a chiropractor and you want to use a template like this because you find it more convenient. We definitely have several clients that are like that. The point here is that this provides you the flexibility to document in a way that makes the most sense for your patients and efficiently create those templates to empower you to do that.
Awesome. Can you stop sharing for a sec? So we can
absolutely
close this up and have a nice runway down.
Okay.
So I thank you for this. This is really cool, and I appreciate it. And truthfully, it's not often that I can get excited about documentation because I'm a people person, as we just had the discussion before this. But I've gotten excited about this because I got so much resistance from the practitioners, the allopathic practitioners that were working for me, PAs, NPs, MDs, and having to go outside and spend more money on more software that doesn't integrate. So thank you for this tech. Thank you for this computer engineering and coding and your passion around it. For those of you Genesis users who are not implementing this feature into your Genesis platform, just give us a call. We can get Roy on with you. We can get our other trainers on with you to help put these templates into place so you can practice faster, more efficiently, and have your employees being happy, your allopathic employees. So any final words here on the FlexNote?
No, we're excited for more people to get their hands on it. I think 100% you're right. The big struggle with trying to run an integrated clinic is getting everybody to use that EHR in the way that you think is convenient. And oftentimes it ends up in situations where you've got to adopt another system, or someone makes a little adjustment to the existing system that adds some random text field in some place. And that's not really the solution either. This is really built from the ground up as a platinum level documentation platform for allopathic medical providers. It just happens to live in the number one EHR for chiropractors in the country. So we're very proud of this, and we're excited to get it into people's hands.
And an audience out there, I just want you to see how invested our team is inside here. I'm the smiling face people guy who's bringing these to my brothers and sisters in the chiropractic field who are taking advantage of a marketplace that's shifting and adding integrative elements into their practice. So please give us a call, comment down below, let us know how you think about this and some successes and maybe some things that we can improve on our own. So thank you, Genesis Nation.
Thanks, everyone. Pleasure to be here. See you, Brian.